Welcome into another edition of the Stripe Show podcast. It is Froggy Wednesdays, and I'm telling you, our guests are getting better every single week. Last week, we had Rocco Mediate. We talked about his 91 hole epic battle with Tiger Woods at the 2008 U.S. Open. And now this week, we've got PGA Tour winner of the Greater Vancouver Open in 1998. He bested Payne Stewart by 3 shots, but also known for what he has been called the Da Vinci of sports commentators. Sometimes he's made me really mad. Other times I'm like, Brandel, say it louder for the people in the back. We've got Brandel Chamblee. Thank you so much for tuning in, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to join you. It's always nice to catch up. And I didn't realize you guys had Rocco Mediate last week. How was that? That'd be great. He's animated as hell.
He is awesome. He was sitting on his back porch in Pennsylvania, smoking a cigar, and just told stories about that epic battle that he still remembers as if it was yesterday.
Yeah, well, no reason to forget that. I certainly haven't.
Brenda, do you agree that's probably one of the greatest major championships of the current era of our lifetime?
Definitely. If I were ranking U.S. Opens, 1960 comes to mind, surely. 1980, surely, 2000. But I don't know how you beat 2008 unless you want to say the 2019 Masters. So
right, I give you that one too. Yeah, I'd say that was pretty epic too.
Tiger's pretty good at delivering epic comebacks. Jack wasn't too bad at delivering mind-blowing comebacks as well. 80 for him was amazing. He birdied the last 2 holes, and
right.
But yeah. I mean, it's fun to sit around and talk about the best. But nobody's.
I'm one of these people that it goes by era. Like, for example, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, so I'm a little jaded. But I believe that Tom Brady is the greatest of this era. I could argue that he's the greatest football player we've ever seen, and probably will ever see in my lifetime. But it's hard to compare eras, and so what we've seen in this era is truly unbelievable. A lot of times we have a guest on and I'm like, how are we going to cover 30 minutes? Like, what all is there going to be to talk about? I got to be honest with you. Today, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried how we're going to get everything in because there are so
then
many
I'll
things.
Try to keep my answers short.
No, there's so many things I want to ask you. And I love your answers are always well thought out. They're very educated. Whether you agree with them or whether you don't, they always come from a place of education, which is all you can ask for when you ask somebody a question. U.S. Open, Jon Rahm. Is there anybody else? If the golf gods could have had anybody else win, did anybody else deserve to win that tournament more than after what happened at the Memorial?
No.
The way he handled it, the class, because I was one of the people screaming on the mountaintop, just let the guy play by himself, have somebody ride along with him, do whatever we can. He's got a 6-shot lead. He deserves to win. And he handled it with such class and said, you know what? These are the rules. I'm going to wait. I'll get better. I'll be back and play the U.S. Open, and he wins. It was complete poetic justice and karma played out right in front of our eyes.
It really was. It was an ideal of, especially in an era where everybody wants to claim some aggrieved status. And he could have played that card if he wanted to. And he took the nuanced, because there was nuance there, and he was, most people now want to just ignore nuance, and he understood the nuance. He understood that the rule was set in place long before he ever teed off at Muirfield, and then he accepted the consequences. Initially you saw the pain because it had to have hurt. I mean, it was another win when we measure people by wins and FedEx Cup points, and I mean that's that currency is, it's almost more important than the money because it leads you to even more money, kind of thing. Right. So now I've never seen anybody handle that kind of shocking news better. I've never heard anybody talk about it more eloquently. And then you're right, he called it karma, poetic justice, whatever you want to call it. But it's a guy that's on an incredible. You can't even say it's a hot run because he's been doing this for 5 years now. He's so consistent, and he has evolved into the best ball striker on the PGA Tour. And going into the event, he was the best golfer on the PGA Tour, irrespective of what the world rankings say. Much like Tiger Woods was the best player going into the 2008 U.S. Open, irrespective of what his health would have said. And in both instances, the golf course proved to be an ideal stage for the best player in the world.
Well, Brandel, do you agree that we have seen Jon Rahm mature a great amount in the way he handles when things aren't going his way? It's kind of happened right before our eyes. And now with the way that Memorial was handled and to see the way things played out at the U.S. Open, have we seen him grow up just here in the last couple of years?
Well, people, I'm around it a lot. I hear it a lot that people, they extrapolate from his behavior on the golf course to his character. And I get that that's easy to do in sport, but we're often wrong in doing that. He is very high spirited on the golf course, suffers from a lot of highs and lows. It's never affected his golf on the golf course. That's not what affects his golf. I mean, there is that bounce back stat, how well you do after you make a bogey, and he's always amongst the leaders. So it's not like he makes a bogey and loses the plot. But the one thing I've always, and I'd agree with you, he's matured as a player in the sense that he's become a better iron player. And in this particular instance, he's struggled when he's gotten close to the lead. For as often as he's contended, you could argue that he hasn't had as many wins as you would have expected.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with him getting quicker and quicker when he's in the top 10 or when he's close to the lead. He's been better at chasing. And this was, I think, an evolution for him. I think whereas you see some players win and you think that's lightning in a bottle, that's them playing the best golf they could ever play. I watched him and I think he can play a lot better than this. This is the next. I mean, this is a huge step because again, we sit on the set and we look at wins and sometimes we'll talk about that as this will catapult them to the next level. But often major championship wins are more of an ending than a beginning.
Right.
And this is, I would argue, and I think most people would agree, more of a beginning.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I'm surprised he doesn't have a major championship already to his credit. And this could be what I believe to be an avalanche that could start because he is such a good ball striker. And he's also, what we've seen is he's one hell of a putter as well. He putts very well on putts that a lot of people, as a right-handed player, myself being a right-handed player, I know that downhill slider to the right, we tend to miss on the short side. You tend to miss it. You don't hit it hard enough because you'll wipe at it a little bit. But those two putts he made on 17 and 18 were not easy putts, and he put them right dead in the center of the jar. I think his putting is underrated as well.
You think about it, he's already accumulated in his short span of professional golf these, at least by my count, 4 epic putts coming down the stretch. Obviously, the one he made from the back of the green when he won his first tour event at Torrey Pines, the one he made at the BMW on the final green at Olympia Fields, and then these at 17 and 18. This is Tiger stuff. Tiger used to have a capacity for miracles that was fantasy. It was like pure fantasy. You just can't do the things that Tiger did over and over and over again. I mean, every player gets his moment, but to see a player come along who could hold wedges and stiff it and make putts from every conceivable direction when he absolutely had to. Shakespeare didn't have that kind of imagination, and Jon Rahm's got that. What else could you ask of an athlete?
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of? So I saw a stat the other day that our most recent U.S. Opens, we've had Brooks Koepka's won twice, Dustin Johnson, Gary Woodland, Bryson DeChambeau, now Jon Rahm. Has distance overtaken accuracy at the U.S. Open where it used to be a game all of accuracy?
No, not at all. On the contrary. So if you can find a period, let's say from sort of the mid 80s to the mid 90s, where you could find a run of short hitters that won, shortish hitters that won what you would say with accuracy, great accuracy, and that's the Ray Floyd, Scott Simpson, Curtis Strange, Lee Jansen, Corey Pavin, That's that era. Okay.
Right.
And it's just a straight run. And so it's almost a decade. And what you'll find is they were about 22nd in driving accuracy. Really good stuff. And then you come forward to 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and John Rahm would fit into this category. And you find players, and by the way, those players that I just mentioned from the late or mid 80s to mid 90s, they averaged bottom of the field in driving distance. Okay.
Right.
Now then you have players that are in the top 5 in driving distance who are about 24th, 25th in driving accuracy. So almost identical in accuracy to the shortest hitters that were winning U.S. Opens. And they're the longest hitters in the game. So what you have is not an evolution of long but inaccurate drivers, but you have a revolution of the longest, straightest hitters, more complete players in the game. Better athletes come along, and not only are they more powerful, but they're better athletes, so they swing better, and they can incorporate all of the diagnostic tools that we have available to the players. So what we have right now is more great players in the game. It used to be that Greg Norman came along who hit it long and straight. You think, okay, well that's an aberration. Nobody can do that.
Right.
Well, now we have a dozen players that can do that.
Wow.
And they're on the landscape. They're here, and they're driving it long. They're driving it straight. They're complete players. Tiger brought better athletes to the game, but the diagnostic tools available because of the money and the interest, and I think a higher quality of teacher coming to the game has brought about a better understanding of where power comes from, but also where accuracy comes from.
Would you agree that TrackMan has completely, or the track, not just TrackMan in itself by name brand, but in the Doppler radar equipment that's out there, has completely revolutionized the game, probably as much as anything else?
I don't give TrackMan that much credit. I think it's more pressure maps, pressure tracing. I think it's more high-speed video. I think it's understanding center of mass traces. And I think it's the long drive guys. You have a very clear understanding now of where power comes from. I think, yeah, TrackMan, Flight Scope, they were fine. They certainly they help. They get some credit, but what you have is a better understanding now of how to move in the golf swing, and because of high speed video, you don't have to guess. You're not guessing about where the hands are, what sort of anatomical precision or how you can accurately describe what wrists and elbows and shoulders are they internally or externally rotated, or the inflection or the extension.
Right.
You don't have to guess anymore. You can see it and you can know. I mean, I argued for years about against the center post golf swing or lean left golf swing. And, to me, it was always incredible that anybody could even counter the argument. It's like, I hear people say that you should be centered. Like, nobody did that. And people would look at me incredulously. Well, now, because you can go to YouTube and you can see that nobody stays centered. You can see that the head doesn't stay centered. Nobody argues that anymore.
Right.
And once people understood that you got to move and turn and extend and drop down and explode. So there are a lot of things that have brought about this evolution of more complete players. And TrackMan is one of them, but I wouldn't give it the lion's share of the work.
Now, speaking of golf swings, and I know you are a fan of length in the golf swing, not the short, compact. So John Rahm is obviously known for the bowed left rest at the top, but his backswing is much shorter than what we have seen where I know that you're a fan of the heel coming off the ground and that kind of stuff. Is Rahm's swing one of longevity that can last, or is it eventually going to break down because our bodies aren't meant to restrict and then rip through?
Well, history says, it's likely not going to be one of great longevity, but history changes. I mean, fitness changes, understanding of, I mean, I see all the posts. He's with all these great flexibility and fitness guys. I've never liked the short, quick swing for a couple of reasons. One, because it leaves so much power in reserve. Two, because it tends to be more injurious on the body. And I watch it time and time again. And three, the longer swing hits it higher. I could go on and on and on about the benefits of a longer golf swing. But all you have to do is look at Tom Watson and Sam Snead and Phil Mickelson, and they make the argument. Short golf swings, nobody has a shorter, quicker one than Rahm. Nobody. In the history of this game, I've never seen a shorter, quicker swing than him. People say it's like Lee Trevino. It's like Lee Trevino's swing was much longer than John Rahm's. Yeah. I've got a video of Lee Trevino playing in majors where he's almost got the club to parallel. I mean, it's just a click short of parallel. John Rahm is 3/4 swing at best. But I mean, once he changes direction, he goes into and gets into some of the most beautiful positions. I mean, he goes very Byron Nelson on you in a heartbeat. Now, Byron had a pretty short swing. We don't know if his would have lasted a long time because he retired, but right. Byron had a pretty short swing, and John Rahm looks closer to Byron Nelson through the golf ball than any player I've ever seen. People love to say he looks like Lee Trevino, and there's certainly some things they have in common in the backswing, but I would say he looks more like Byron Nelson. So, look, the short, quick golf swing that he had, I looked at, I thought it was going to be problematic for him until he learned to slow it down, but as he gets older, we'll see. I hope it does it, but my guess is, it's not going to, golf swings don't get longer as they get older. They get shorter. Right. And if he loses that space where he can turn things into gold from backswing to downswing, and it gets quicker, then, the game gets really, really hard. And I've looked at every short swing pretty much you can imagine, but I've never seen one shorter or quicker than Rahm's. But look, he's a very big guy. He's very strong. And so he can afford to leave a little power in reserve and still hit it out there far enough. But again, his transition and his move through impact and his position at impact, I've put it on Twitter long before he got here. I put it on there 2017, 18, somewhere in there. I was like, put him up and I put Byron Nelson up. I'm like, I've always looked at Byron Nelson's impact position and thought that was it. That's the gold standard. I know people love Hogan, and there's plenty of others to choose from, but in my view, nobody ever gotten impact position better than Byron Nelson, and here comes Rahm, who's in the same spot.
Rapsodo Mobile Launch Monitor. Improve your golf swing today. Pro-level launch data in the palm of your hand. It is very accurate, within 2% of a $20,000 unit. The Rapsodo MLM app automatically tracks stats and stores video with Shot Tracer, helpful for club gapping and understanding true distances for each club. Rapsodo MLM provides immediate feedback, data, and creates a better practice environment, not mindlessly hitting balls. Extremely portable, cases about the size of a rangefinder. And you know what? You can use it both indoors and outdoors. I love this launch monitor. It's the Rapsodo Mobile Launch Monitor. Check it out at rapsodo.com, rapsodo.com, rapsodo.com.
Right. I know a lot of people complain about the World Golf Rankings and they don't like them and they think there needs to be some update to it. But, it seems to be getting it right. John Rahm is now currently the number one in the world. I know it's a razor-thin margin. Dustin Johnson, number 2, and Justin Thomas at number 3. Do you agree that those are the best 3 players in the world right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's more common for parity to be at the top. It's rare when you get separation at the top. Very, very rare. I mean, throughout history, there's only been a few players that separated themselves from other superstar peers of their era. So parity at the top is the norm, not the exception. So, at any given time, if Dustin Johnson's playing his best golf and Justin Thomas is playing his best golf and John Rahm's playing his best golf, if Rory started playing his best golf, you know, I mean, I think that we would have, you know, tissue thin differences between these players.
Right.
I always felt like Rory, because he came out and won majors in blowout fashion, and then won 4 majors very quickly in his career. I thought, well, he's going to double digits, and he can separate himself. He always looked like the player who could. But as we know, hurdles, they just pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah,
They just pop up. Injuries, swing changes. You know, life gets in the way, and it works to slow players down. And that's just the nature of the game. That's why you have more parity at the top, because little things happen to keep people from having that blue flame of intensity that they need to play the greatest golf.
You were there for all 4 days, and obviously well before, and you've spent plenty of time at Torrey Pines. Do you feel Torrey was a good venue? There was a lot of talk that we go there every year already, and all there is to do is grow out the rough and this, that. And I've heard all the detractors. I thought on Sunday afternoon, when you looked at that leaderboard, there were still 9 holes of golf to be played. It was really a very good test. We had the top players in the world at the top. I felt like Torrey gave us a good, you know, test for the greatest players in the world. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we're all on Twitter, and like Twitter's a very small pocket of people that talk about golf.
Right. And they're
Twitter,
often not very positive.
Well, yeah, has been, you know, I looked this up a few years ago, but Twitter skews young, it skews negative, and it skews liberal. So, you know, so when you go on there, you have to understand it's a very biased pocket of people that you're talking to. In the golf world, it skews pretty young for sure. And the grumpier people are, the more they get attention. And the grumpiest people in golf are people who think that every golf course should be a links golf course. It should have been designed by old Tom Morse or George Thomas or Tilly, you know, and if it wasn't, it's a crap golf course, and it wasn't blessed to have fescue all over it. And it's got to be brown and have no trees, and got to have some people in tweed blowing on the pipes. Otherwise it's a crap course.
Right.
You know, they're just a bunch of grumpy people. And it's bad when you know what people are going to say about a golf course before they ever speak. I'm not of the view that the golf course is great, but I would say the golf course is fine. It's good. And what Reese Jones has done is, if you can't, or should I say, is it not often or always even the criticism of golf course that it favors one particular type of player? That's the quickest criticism of a golf course. Oh, it favors short hitters, or it favors long hitters, and that's the worst pejorative category. It's just a bomb and gouge golf course. And so when you have a golf course that is now 2 for 2 at divining out, when Tiger Woods went into the U.S. Open in 2008, he was leading the tour in scoring average, and he was the best ball striker, demonstrably the best ball striker on tour. And Jon Rahm went into this U.S. Open leading in scoring average and was demonstrably the best ball striker on tour. Is it not at least a good thing to say about a golf course that it divined out the very best player, and along the way provided opportunities for every kind of player, short hitters, old players, long and crooked, long and straight, every type of player. And, you know, people say, well, every hole looked alike. Well, you know, it's, you know, not every golf course is blessed with, being right. This is on a cliff overlooking the ocean. And I would say, look, I could differentiate between the holes. I could certainly differentiate between the holes. I didn't think every hole looked alike. And except for not having enough punishment for the bailout on 4, that I had an issue with that, being able to bomb it over the bunkers and bail out right the way Bryson DeChambeau and many others did on 4. That's a criticism I had. But otherwise, I think the golf course was, it was extraordinary. It was beautiful. And it does a very nice job of providing a great stage for the best players.
Yeah, and I mean, the best player won. I don't feel like we got a parody of a player that won. I feel like at the end of the day, the best player won.
Yes.
And that's fair. something that we always talk about, and I'll give you my opinion after you give yours, and maybe we'll have the same opinion. Who do you think is the best player right now that does not have a major championship?
The best player right now that doesn't have a major championship.
I've got my thought as why, and I wanted to ask yours, because I think there's one player that we all thought would already have one by now.
Xander Schauffele.
That's exactly what I've got written down. He has spent 9 top 10 finishes in 17 career majors and doesn't have one yet. And I feel like I felt like there was a time on Friday or Saturday that I felt like maybe it was his turn and maybe he was going to get in the mix, and he backed off. Xander is so good, but I do feel like he is probably the best well-rounded player that doesn't have one yet.
Yeah, he was my pick Wednesday night. Wednesday night live front we always made pick, and I didn't pick Jon Rahm because I had picked him to win the PGA Championship, and he kind of did what he's done prior to. We got close and then fettered it away, but ultimately played fine. I picked Xander because just everything pointed towards Xander. Actually, everything did point to Jon Rahm, everything. And he was the favorite and blah, blah, but I didn't pick him. I picked Xander. Everything else pointed to Xander. And I picked him. I didn't know. I was off the week he went to the arm lock putting. I knew that he lost strokes arm lock putting. I thought that he would show up and putt okay. I didn't realize that he was going to putt so poorly.
Well, the whole reason he's doing it is weird. He says he's doing it to prove that it's cheating and that it's not fair. It's a little strange.
Look, he was. I get it. I think the whole world can see that without him wiping the tables with it. He was a top 10 putter in the world. What? Top 10? He was top 10 putter in the world, and he was. He putted abysmally there. If he had putted the way he had been putting, he would have won the U.S. Open. Now, look, these things don't. Could he have handled the pressure? Would he have been there?
Right.
But statistically, he would have likely won the U.S. Open. That was bizarre to me. Why someone would stick with a method that you can clearly see it's inadequate. Now, it's inadequate to what he was doing, and he's now stuck with it. Maybe he turns around and wipes the field, but in the meantime, he lost a U.S. Open using the arm lock putter.
Right. You mentioned swing changes earlier, and everybody's going through swing changes, but I think that there's two that have really been kind of prominent lately. One is Jordan Spieth, and another is Rory McIlroy. I'm not seeing a lot of differences in Rory. I felt I saw more at the Wells Fargo when he won. His club looked a little more laid off at the top and looked like he was trying to hit fades, but now this past week at the Open, the club looked like it was more back across the line, and he was back to hitting draws again.
Yeah.
But Jordan Spieth's changes are, way different. And what do you make of both guys and the changes that they're going through right now?
Yeah, I'd hope that Rory's on his way to a spot closer to where he was when he was younger. And yes, I watched, the shot tracer show draw after draw after draw with Rory at this U.S. Open. And his ball striking was good enough to where he could have won. Yeah. He putted terribly. The difference between what he was and what Jon Rahm was basically just in the putter, a little bit in the ball striking, but mostly in the putter. And he's played good enough with this golf swing now where I think, okay, he can figure it out. It's not as good as the golf swing was when he came out, but Roy would argue he can't do that anymore. But I would argue this golf swing is not as good as the swing he was using in 2017, 18, 19. So I'm not crazy about what I see with his golf swing. I think he gets under it. He's got to flip too much. He's got to stall. And I think that's because he's too deep at the top, not enough upright. He played better when he was more upright and he had a little more cup in the left wrist. That's when he played his best. So, I personally think he could get back there, but he argues he can't. Certainly, I'll defer to him, but he could get back to something like that.
Right.
With Spieth, it's one of the more bizarre makeovers. And look, it stopped his downward slide in the world rankings and turned things around. And his iron play was extraordinary at the U.S. Open. Jordan Spieth, but I didn't pick him because even at his best, with the exception of his first year on tour, when he was, I would say, in his first year on tour, he averaged 67% of the fairways. Jordan Spieth did.
Wow.
He was 12th in strokes gained off the tee his first year on the tour. So he was good enough then not to have ever touched it and to go on and be a good driver of the golf ball. And if that's the case, things would have progressed accordingly. But now he's a low 50% fairways guy, and laid off. And when I look at him at the top, I think, well, how's he going to get that on the ball? How could he even get it on the ball from there? He's not like laid off the way John Rahm is, where he gets up there and it makes sense. As soon as he makes his transition down, you think, oh, this is going to be awesome. I mean, the club just gets right where it needs to be. With Spieth, when he transitions, you think, it still doesn't look good. I'm not a fan of his golf swing, but I'm a fan that he's turned things around. He struggles with his driving still, so he's not anywhere close to being, the player he was from 2013 through 17 or 15 when he drove it great from.
Right.
So look, I mean, he just apparently he couldn't find his way back home. So this, what I understand is this one is it's got Jason Duffner's fingerprints all over. Jason Duffner's worked with him on his golf swing. I'm hearing that from a lot of different people, enough to where I believe it, because this is such a crazy different golf swing, and I know that Jason Duffner's got sort of the same movements and sort of swing thoughts that I see in Jordan Spieth's swing.
Now, there's a lot of talk of shallowing the club. Like, that seems to be the new thing everybody's talking about, shallowing the club. And as you see in Jordan's pre-shot routine, you do see him lay it and then just rotate really hard left.
Yeah.
Why all this talk about shallowing the club? And are you on board with this? Is it something you agree with? Is it something an amateur should be trying to do, where they're abducting that right arm, almost like losing an arm wrestling match with your right arm to get the club behind you and then rotate through?
Yeah, that's a bad way to do it, I'd argue. You can shallow the club without externally rotating your trail shoulder. I don't think you should try to externally rotate your trail shoulder to shallow the club at all. I think, the proper way to shallow the club is, like, at least in my view, is to be a little bit more inflection in transition. And it'll happen naturally. I mean, shallowing happens as a consequence. You can't force it. You try to force it, you'll be too late in the subsequent movements to ever square the club face up. It's just got to happen because of a sequential transition from backswing to downswing. Things just have to happen correctly. George Gankas has been very successful at getting players to shallow the club by internally rotating the shoulder on the backswing, and having the right wrist, more, or the trail wrist more in pronation. So, but if you go more inflection in transition, the club will, it'll bring about a nice shallowing, not enough shallowing. Tiger Woods did this. If you go back and look at Tiger Woods down the line on any video, and you want to measure the angles that he has at the top of his backswing to the beginning of his downswing, and you'll see how much compaction you have, and the shallowing will just naturally happen. I think most amateurs lose their posture, and they stand up. And if you stand up, you're not going to shallow the club. All kinds of bad things are going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, but to talk about shallowing, I mean, it's cool. I mean, the best ever at it was Byron Nelson, and if you go back and you look at the way Byron Nelson took the club back, I mean, it's very much like, I wrote about this in my book. It's like, this right hand is like that going back. It's not like that. Right. He's not rolling up. That would be externally rotating your shoulder, going back like this, right?
Right. With your right palm
very much like this. Now, the reason I say I don't think the right shoulder goes like that in transition, right? It goes from less internal rotation, goes from internal rotation to maybe less. But I don't think you go like this, because I don't want my right arm to go like this. It's more like this way. It's going to be more pronated.
Right.
So I mean, then these are the reasons why I think golf swings are better, is because now then you can look and very clearly see whether somebody's trail shoulder and right wrist and exactly what's happening, and you can zoom in on it. And then I think the whole teaching world owes a debt of gratitude to a fellow by the name of Kelvin Miyahara from Hawaii, who I think he was the source of the anatomical precision with which people speak now. He got the ball headed in that direction, and that would have been about maybe 15 years ago. I'd go online and read his stuff, and I was like, this guy's amazing. And I got on a plane and flew out and spent a day with him, and just to try to understand where this wellspring of knowledge was coming from. The day after I left, 2 days after I left, he had a stroke, and he's been incapacitated as far as I know since. It's unfortunate, but Kelvin taught, Kelvin or the people that worked with Kelvin went and they shared their information, and it goes all the way to Genghis and Como and Lucas Wald, and now all of them will find little things that they disagree with Kelvin on, but all of them will find little things that they disagree with each other on too.
Right.
But what they all get right is the anatomical precision with which they talk, and the understanding of, I think they have a greater understanding of cause and effect, and shallowing can come about, in any number of ways, but mostly I think it comes about with proper body movement and transition.
Yeah, I would be completely out of line if I did not ask you, and I know you have a very extreme opinion on the Brooks Bryson thing that's been going on and continues to go on. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's driven by the player impact program and social media. I'm not sure exactly what's driving it, but Bryson's performance at the US Open almost made a hole in one on number 8 there.
Yeah.
And then just came completely undone. 11, 12 make bogeys. 13, his foot slipped. He makes another double. And then on 18 makes a quad and was completely out of it at that point. But I know where Brandel Chamblee stands on the Bryson and Brooks deal. I know you don't like it. Do you think it's good for golf in any way, shape, or form?
I don't at all. I think we're in an era now where people are very quick to confuse attention with achievement, and Brooks has attempted to do that, thinking that all attention is good. And Paige McKenzie made this point on our air, saying, trying to, again, divine out the nuance in Brooks saying that it brings eyeballs and ears, and that's good for golf. And Paige, who's become very, very good at everything, and always was, but she's amazing, I think. She was like, if all attention was good, the LPGA could just play in bikinis and they'd get more attention. But that undermines and objectifies the very thing that shouldn't be undermined or objectified. All attention is not good. In this particular case, he's gaining attention, at least in my view, by asking and going on social media to prompt people to harangue and heckle somebody during competition. That to me is, if it's not bullying, it's poor sportsmanship. So at the very least, it's poor sportsmanship, but I think it's cyberbullying. And I do think kids who are wanting to play this game or have any interest in this game, they watch that and they think, oh, that's cool. That's cool. He got a lot of attention and a lot of interest. So that's cool to cross that line. You can cross that line. I know you could cross that line. That's cool. You can call people to your purposes to go harass somebody, to go bully them on the golf course. That's cool. I think this whole idea that we can't have ideals is misguided. Um, I'm not. I mean, ideals are good. Ideals of behavior are good. They're good to aim at, for sure. I mean, everybody may fall short. We all make mistakes, but that's not to say that we can't have ideal behavior. And what Brooks did is not ideal behavior. It doesn't represent. And I'm not some guy, that thinks that everything about the game was better in days of yore, but I think civility is important.
Now, do you put it all on Brooks? You don't seem to be putting any of the blame on to Bryson.
I'm unaware of what Bryson did that would have brought about the response that Brooks had, both in the first post that came about. Unfortunate as it did, the first post that came out, but it was his second post when he went online offering beer to people, and prompting people to harangue and harass Bryson. I don't know what Bryson did in this whole thing. What did Bryson do?
I did see him this week at the Open when Brooks was doing an interview. He was walking down behind it and he jumped up in the air and was doing whatever he was doing. I think there's a little bit of blame to go on both sides.
I thought that personally. I thought that's Bryson, at least in my view, the way I took it. And you're the first person that's taken it another way. I thought that's Bryson trying to make light of something that is being a huge distraction in his life. And the first time Bryson got upset at being called Brooksy on the golf course, it brought about more people calling him that.
Right.
So I think Bryson reversed course in an effort to stem the tide of this. This brought about a pretty nasty environment on the golf course for him, for sure. I always look at Bryson as that guy in school that does things differently, that's easy to pick on, that's a little socially awkward. And Brooksy would be the cool kid at school. Right. I've just got my kids out of high school. My oldest one's out of college, but I was acutely aware of bullying in high school, and I would, I'd pick my kids up from school and they'd tell me things, and I'd go down to the school and talk to parents and teachers. And I thought, who's raising these kids that have no awareness or empathy for people that they are bullying? Who's raising these kids?
Right.
Bullying is a big deal. It's so pervasive now, not just in schools, but online everywhere. And
for sure. And
so anything that tiptoes towards bullying, cyberbullying, is it's disgusting. It's repulsive, and to see Brooks try to legitimize his words and his behavior, and give it a bigger reason other than harassing somebody, was laughable in my book. I hear Brooks is a nice guy. I've got friends that are friends of his, and they say Brooks is a nice guy. Maybe he is, but I would say this is a mistake in my view.
Do you think the PGA Tour needs to put a stop to it?
Yeah, I do.
How do you stop it? What's the best ending? What's the best way to make this go away?
Well, when you become a PGA Tour member, you sign a slip that you sign a piece of paper that says you will not disparage any other tour player. So, in my view, he's already violated one of the principles of being a PGA Tour player, and he, any more fines, they need to be six figures, or suspensions. It's not cool, but there's a lot of if you put yourself in the commissioner's view seat these days, it's like it's you got a super golf league on the horizon. It's difficult that the players have more power and probably is ideal for the well-being of the tour. But if you're running the tour, I think you have to stem this, because it's bad for the overall image of the players. People look at this and assume that is the nature with which the game is played, and it's not. It's not consistent with anything in the game. But beyond that, it's just not ideal for any sort of behavior. Civility is important. More civility means there's less violence. More incivility means there's more violence in society.
Right.
And is this civil or incivil?
Yeah, we've got enough violence going on right now around the world. We don't need to add any more.
It comes from the incivility that people see and get stirred up on in social media. And this is just another example of incivility on social media that, you don't have to look very hard to see the incivility, and incivility leads to more violence. It's as simple as that. This is not that complicated. This is not the ideal behavior of one tour player towards another.
Real quick, before we let you go, I do want to ask you about two other things, and you brought up one of them just then. But first, where are you on the green reading books? I know that talking about the PGA Tour getting rid of green reading books, because reading greens is a skill. It's absolutely a skill. You've played on the PGA Tour, Are you for that, against that?
I've never been for green reading books. I don't know how they ever got legal in the first place. I'm not for lines on golf balls. That shouldn't be allowed either. And reading is a skill. And not only is it a skill, but the best green readers, to read a green properly, you have to be completely out of thinking about technique with your stroke. See, the best green readers are the best putters. People act like they have, or they possess some skill that nobody else has. I would just argue it's not that they know how to read greens better. It's that they're not thinking about the mechanics of their stroke. And if you're not thinking about the mechanics of your stroke, your attention can go elsewhere and pick up on the nuances, the sheen. You can, this little slope, that little slope, your body chemistry, all of those things. And then you put them together, and then you spit out a formula for it. And the more you are in the moment, and the less you are thinking about mechanics, the better you're going to read greens. And the less you're thinking about mechanics, the more chance you're going to hit it solid. And the more solid strikes mean you get a better sort of feedback on what greens are going to do. So reading greens comes about organically. Everybody has the capacity to do it. They just have to quit thinking about their stroke and pick up on the nuances. And that's sport.
Right.
The green reading books are terrible. They've been terrible. Not 1 second have they not been terrible for golf. Just like lines on golf balls are terrible. They're terrible.
I'm guilty of using a line on a golf ball. When I got a 3-footer, I really do feel like it helps me. I do. I feel like,
of course it does.
And I'm surprised it is legal.
You watch these guys, Bryson in particular, he'll line up because we see him a lot, but he'll line up the line, and he'll stand behind with his putter and line up, the putter with the line. And now he knows exactly where to aim it. It's a bad look. How that's legal is beyond me. So good. It's never too late to do the right thing. But it was sneaking up on too late to do the right thing. Good for them.
Yes, the green reading book's supposed to go away next year. So something else you brought up on the horizon, there's all this talk of the Premier Golf League. Now, this is completely different for somebody who is confused. The Premier Golf League is different than the Saudi League that we have heard people talk about.
That's right.
Completely two different things. Is this Premier Golf League viable, number one? And number two, is it something that the tour should be worried about?
Yes and yes. If you don't think that players can be enticed to leave for, tens of millions of dollars, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars, who knows? Right. You just haven't put yourself in their shoes. If somebody comes along and offers you 3-4 times the money to play less golf, when you can still conceivably go play in the major championships, and that the moral aspect of this is eliminated because apparently there's no Saudi money in it, then it becomes this existential debate They are no longer free to come and go as they please. They're required to play those 18 tournaments, and they lose their PGA Tour status. But not only do they lose their PGA Tour status, let's say they go. Okay, being a superstar is it's a roller coaster ride. Being a star is a roller coaster ride. So let's say you go over and play that tour, and your game falls off. At what point do they get rid of you on the Super Golf League?
Right.
Do you play for, let's say you go over there and finish 40th on the money list, and they've only got 45 players or whatever it is, but you finish towards the bottom. So now they discard you because you weren't playing enough tournaments to turn your game around. You didn't get that sort of 20% of the tournaments you played. You never hit. So your star level fell just enough. And now then you are a man without a tour.
Yeah, you can't come back to the PGA Tour.
You can't come play the Korn Ferry Tour. You can't go play the Champions Tour. You can't go play the PGA Tour. Now, again, will that hold up in court of law? They're convinced it will, and they've done their due diligence. I'm pretty sure they're convinced it will, because you signed such a statement that you won't do anything to hurt the tour, among other lines in those paragraphs. So, and the Super Golf League. So now then they have sort of a tenuous relationship with the lower orders of the players that they've asked to come over and risk everything. Because if a few superstars go over there, and it's 15 of them, watching the same players play each other week after week after week will get very old. And by the way, some of these tournaments are going to transpire in the Middle East, which is going to put it at weird times that nobody's going to watch, and the ratings are going to not be warranted, and people are not going to watch the same players beating the same players every single week.
Right.
What the Super Golf League is missing and doesn't understand is, one, you have to have a league to grow stars and to grow superstars. You have to have a feeder tour. Okay. If you don't, not only do you miss underdog stories, which are some of the most compelling stories. You just alluded to the 2008 U.S. Open with Rocco, but throw in Bob May 2000, throw in John Daly 1991, and I could go on and on about the underdog stories that
even Michael
pop up.
Visacki a couple of weeks ago, guy finally gets into the Monday qualifier. He didn't make a cut, but it's still a great story that people love to see an underdog get his chance.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, look, there are varying degrees of underdog stories in every tournament. Every tournament has those, but occasionally underdogs come along and go up against superstars, and it's must watch stuff. Right. So the Super Golf League is not going to have not one underdog story. It will never have that. So there's no inspirational aspect to watching the Super Golf League. There is pure entertainment at odd hours, asking players to give up every aspect of their freedom and potentially their ability to play on the PGA Tour.
That's a big ask.
They've got a lot of money in deep pockets, and so existential hurdles. I've argued against the Saudi Golf League for obvious reasons. This one is for existential reasons and for nuanced reasons. I think they got a lot of money, and they think they can throw money at this problem and solve it. Maybe they will, but I think they're missing some very obvious things that people tune in and watch golf for, and also play professional golf for.
Right. No, I agree with you 100%. I think it is viable, but I can see where it is a very small window of opportunity there. And, a really big player might do well, but then the pressure's on you to perform even more so than it is now, because if it doesn't work out, like you said, you're a man without a home. And then
you're without a home. And look, I mean, you could go over there a big star and lose your game and lose your stardom.
And that happens.
You've got nowhere to play. You've got, and I mean, it wouldn't just happen to say a Ricky Fowler who lost his game, or Jordan Spieth who finished, imagine if this thing would have come along in 2014, 15, one, Brooks wouldn't have been on it, but it came along and you go over there and you lose your game a little bit.
Hunter Mahan. the guy was on top of the world for a while, and then
Right.
now has lost his game. He'd be gone, done. See you later.
There's
bye.
no place for you to go try to figure it out and come back in onto the tour. There's no place for you to play. So, these things have popped up over the years many, many times. But I think the tour did the right thing with their player incentive program. Anybody who doubts that or wants to criticize that, I think you just need to do a little research. So, there are all kinds of ways to explain group dynamics and business dynamics, but there's a principle known as the Pareto Distribution, Pareto principle, which says basically that the square root of any number of employees at any business, and this holds true pretty much if you look at the numbers, do 50% of the work. So if you have 100 employees, 10 of them are doing 50% of the work. They're your 10 most prized employees.
Right.
Okay. There's other ways to look at this. It's called the 80-20 principle. There's numerous ways that this is referred to, but essentially it's the square root of the number of employees at any business is responsible for 50% of the workload. They are the ones that are most easily recruited away. Companies lose their way when they lose those key players. It's very easy to lose them because they're the ones they're the go-getters. They are up there early, they stay there late, they're creative, they work hard, and they transform businesses. If you don't pay attention to those employees, and again, they're the easiest ones to get recruited away, the business can lose its way. Yeah. And this is the tour paying attention to the most important employees, if you want to call them that.
Absolutely.
And saying this is your incentive to stay. Now they are incentivized by retirement programs, the FedEx Cup, lavish purses, and the ability to come and go as they please. They can enter. They are the general, the chief, the head cook. They're the whole thing. They can do whatever they want on tour as long as they play 15 events. And then to boot, if you also sign some autographs and people enjoy watching you play, they'll throw more millions of dollars your way. I mean, I can't imagine a better scenario than living and playing most of your golf on the PGA Tour. There's nothing quite like it in the world of professional golf.
No, they're absolutely protecting who they should, and you can't blame them. Brandel, I appreciate your time really tremendously. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
We got the Travelers this week. We have a really good field at the Travelers this week, and the Senior Players Championship going on this week as well. So we got some really good golf, and I believe there's the European Tour's got the BMW International going on in Germany. I think Louis Oosthuizen's in that field. There's some other good players over there as well. So lots of good golf, and we're going to start seeing things kind of meander over the pond a little bit as we get ready for the Open Championship in 3 weeks.
Gets busy. I'm on a plane tomorrow, headed to Hartford. I'll be right in the thick of it, doing live from Hartford. You're right; it's a good field. Andy Bissett does such a great job of getting players to come to that event. I'm looking forward to it. Be a nice week, and I've enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Appreciate it. We got the Travelers this week. We have got Rocket Mortgage in Detroit the week after. And then, of course, the John Deere, where everybody gets on a plane and they head over to play the Open Championship the week after. So lots of good golf coming our way. Brandel, thank you so much. I appreciate your time as always. You are always welcome as a guest here on the podcast.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you somewhere down the road.
You got it. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much. And be here next week. We're going to have country music singer Jake Owen, a huge golf fanatic. He'll be here on the podcast next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Stripe Show podcast.
I just want to interrupt this interview real quick and give a shout out to my friends over at OnCore Golf. OnCore provides some of the most cutting-edge technology in a golf ball that I have ever seen. Their team in Buffalo, New York is changing the script of golf technology through their perimeter-weighted designs, which offer players enhanced accuracy and control for every shot on the course. With their award-winning Elixir and Avant 55 golf balls, they are transforming the game for players of all skill levels. Visit OnCoreGolf.com/Travis Fulton for more details about their products that are revolutionizing the game. Now back to the Stripe Show.